They called the cops when I went fishing on my own family lake. The HOA president smugly showed me papers proving I was trespassing on property that belonged to them now. But he had no idea he just made the biggest mistake of his life. This was war. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching, also like and subscribe for more stories. The morning sun painted golden ripples across the lake as I cast my fishing line into the calm water. This was my sanctuary, my escape from the world's chaos. The ranch had been in my family for 3 generations, and this lake was the crown jewel of our 200-acre property. But I had no idea that this peaceful morning would turn into a nightmare that would change my life forever. My name is Jake Morrison and I'm 45 years old. After my wife Sarah died in a car accident 2 years ago, this lake became my only source of peace. Every morning, I would sit on the old wooden dock my grandfather built and fish while the world slowly woke up around me. The water held memories of Sarah and me planning our future, dreaming of the children we would raise here, the life we would build together. But Sarah was gone and now it was just me and the fish. I was lost in thought when I heard car doors slamming behind me. 3 men in expensive suits were walking down the hill toward my dock, their faces stern and angry. Behind them, 2 police officers followed, their hands resting on their belts. "Sir, you need to step away from the water immediately," one of the suited men called out. He was tall and thin, with gray hair and cold blue eyes that reminded me of winter ice. I turned around, confused. "Excuse me? This is my property." "No, sir, this is HOA property now," the man replied, pulling out some official-looking papers. "I'm Richard Blackwell, president of Willowbrook Estates HOA. This lake and surrounding area was transferred to our association last month. You're trespassing." My fishing rod nearly slipped from my hands. "That's impossible. This ranch has been in my family since 1952. My grandfather, my father, and now me, we've owned this land for over 70 years. Officer Martinez, one of the policemen, stepped forward. "Sir, we've received multiple complaints about unauthorized fishing activities. If you don't have permission to be here, we'll need you to leave." My heart was pounding. This couldn't be happening. "Officers, there's been a mistake. This is the Morrison Ranch. I have the deed, the tax records, everything. This lake is on my property." Blackwell smiled coldly. "Your property ended at the fence line, Mr. Morrison. This lake and the land around it was never technically part of your ranch. It was owned by the county and recently sold to our development company. We've built Willowbrook Estates around it, and now it's private HOA property." I looked around for the first time and noticed something that made my blood run cold. Where there used to be open pasture beyond the lake, I could see rooftops. New houses. A whole neighborhood that seemed to have appeared overnight. When did all this happen?" I whispered. "Construction began 18 months ago," another HOA member said. "We sent notices to all affected property owners." "I never received any notices," I said, my voice breaking. "I would have fought this. This lake, it means everything to me." Officer Rodriguez, the second policeman, looked uncomfortable. "Sir, do you have your property deed with you?" "It's back at the house." "Officers, please give me a chance to prove this is my land. My wife, she's buried in the family cemetery just over that hill. This lake is where we got engaged. Where we spent our last morning together before she died." Something in my voice must have reached Officer Martinez because his expression softened. "Mr. Blackwell, would it be possible to give Mr. Morrison a few minutes to retrieve his documentation?" Blackwell's face turned red. "Absolutely not. This man is trespassing and I want him arrested. Our residents pay good money to live in a peaceful community, not to have random people fishing in our lake." "I'm not random people," I shouted, my composure finally breaking. "This is my home. That house up there, I was born in that house. My father died in that house. My wife and I plan to grow old in that house." The HOA members exchanged glances. A woman with perfectly styled blonde hair stepped forward. "Mr. Morrison, I'm sorry for your loss, but the law is the law. If you can't prove ownership, you need to leave." I felt tears burning my eyes. 2 years ago when Sarah died, I stopped caring about everything. I stopped opening mail, stopped answering the phone, stopped living. If there were notices, they probably went to my old P.O. box that I forgot to check. But that doesn't mean I lost my rights to my own land. Officer Martinez put his hand on my shoulder. "Sir, let's walk up to your house and look at those documents. If you can prove ownership, this whole thing gets resolved right now." As we walked up the hill, I felt like I was in a nightmare. The ranch house where I was born looked so small and old compared to the massive McMansions surrounding it. How had I not noticed this happening? How had grief made me so blind to the world around me? Inside the house, I pulled out the metal filing cabinet where my father kept all the important papers. My hands were shaking as I found the deed, the survey maps, the tax records. But as I looked at them, my heart sank. The deed clearly showed the Morrison Ranch as 200 acres. But the lake was marked as adjacent county property, usage rights granted to Morrison Ranch in perpetuity. Usage rights, not ownership. Officer Martinez read over my shoulder. Mr. Morrison, according to this, you had the right to use the lake, but the county owned the actual lake and surrounding 50 acres. I collapsed into my father's old chair. I never knew. Dad always told me the whole thing was ours. Grandpa built that dock. We've been fishing there for 70 years. Blackwell, who had followed us inside, smiled triumphantly. Usage rights don't transfer to new owners, Mr. Morrison. When the county sold the land to our development company, your family's usage agreement became void. But no one told me, I whispered. If I had known, I could have bid on the property myself. The sale was public record, the blonde woman said. It was advertised in the newspaper for 6 months. I hadn't read a newspaper since Sarah died. I hadn't done anything since Sarah died except fish in that lake and try to survive each day. Officer Rodriguez looked at the paperwork. Mr. Morrison, I'm sorry, but legally you were trespassing. However, given the circumstances and your family's long history with the property, I think we can let this go with just a warning. Blackwell's face turned purple. A warning? This man was illegally fishing on private property. I want him arrested. Sir, Officer Martinez said firmly, Mr. Morrison clearly had no intention of breaking the law. His family has been using this lake for decades. A warning is appropriate. This is outrageous. Blackwell shouted. I'm calling your supervisor. After the police left, I sat alone in my kitchen, staring at the deed that had revealed the truth about my family's lake. Through the window, I could see the Willowbrook Estates houses surrounding what used to be our private paradise. The lake that held all my memories with Sarah was now the centerpiece of someone else's luxury development. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Sarah, about all the promises we made sitting on that dock. I thought about my grandfather who built the dock with his own hands, believing he was improving his own property. I thought about my father who taught me to fish there, who never knew he was passing down a lie. The next morning I decided to fight. I drove to the county courthouse and requested all records related to the lake sale. What I found made my blood boil. The sale had been rushed through with minimal public notice. The development company, Blackwell Development LLC, had purchased the 50-acre lake property for only $200,000, a fraction of its real value. But the biggest shock came when I discovered who owned Blackwell Development LLC. Richard Blackwell, the HOA president who had me kicked off the lake, was the same Richard Blackwell who owned the development company. He had bought the county land at a discount, built houses around it, and was now using his position as HOA president to keep everyone else away from the lake he had essentially stolen. I dug deeper. The county commissioner who approved the sale was Blackwell's brother-in-law. The newspaper ads for the sale were placed in a tiny legal notices section that no one ever read. The whole thing was a setup. But I found something else. Something that would change everything. In the original county records from 1952, I discovered a document that my grandfather had filed but apparently never mentioned to my father. When the county first claimed ownership of the lake in 1950, my grandfather had disputed it. He had hired a surveyor who proved that the lake was actually on Morrison Ranch property, not county land. The case had been settled out of court, with the county agreeing to recognize Morrison Ranch ownership of the lake while maintaining it as county property, on paper for tax purposes. It was a complicated arrangement that saved both sides money, but it meant that legally the Morrison family owned the lake. The county had sold property they didn't actually own. I took this information to a lawyer, Rebecca Chin, who specialized in property disputes. She was amazed by what I had uncovered. Jake, this is fraud on multiple levels, she said, spreading the documents across her desk. The county sold property they didn't own. Blackwell bought it knowing there was a dispute. And now he's using his HOA position to exclude the rightful owner, you. Can we get the lake back? I asked. We can do better than that, Rebecca smiled. We can prove that the entire development was built on illegally obtained land. Every house sale in Willowbrook Estates was based on fraudulent ownership claims. The lawsuit we filed sent shockwaves through the community. The local newspaper picked up the story, Local Man Fights HOA for Family Lake, Uncovers Development Fraud. National news followed. The story of a grieving widower fighting a corrupt HOA resonated with people across the country. Blackwell fought back hard. He hired expensive lawyers and tried to paint me as a crazy hermit who was trying to steal community property. The HOA sent threatening letters to all the Willowbrook Estates residents, claiming I was trying to take their homes. But the truth was on my side. The court case took 8 months. During that time, I wasn't allowed to fish in the lake. Every morning, I would sit on my porch and look down at the water, remembering Sarah. The HOA posted guards to make sure I didn't come near it. Rebecca worked tirelessly, uncovering more evidence of corruption. She found emails between Blackwell and his brother-in-law discussing how to handle the Morrison problem before the sale. She discovered that Blackwell had known about my grandfather's ownership claim and had deliberately rushed the sale while I was grieving and not paying attention to legal notices. The trial was intense. Blackwell took the stand and tried to claim he was protecting the community from a dangerous trespasser. But when Rebecca presented the evidence of his fraud, his confident facade crumbled. The key moment came when she showed the court the original surveyor's report from 1952, proving that the lake was on Morrison Ranch property. Then she showed the emails proving Blackwell knew this when he bought the land. "Your Honor," Rebecca said in her closing argument, "Mr. Blackwell didn't just buy a lake. He bought a stolen lake. And when the rightful owner came to fish in the waters his family had used for 70 years, Mr. Blackwell had him arrested as a trespasser. This isn't just fraud, it's cruelty." The judge ruled in our favor on all counts. The lake was returned to me. Blackwell Development LLC was ordered to pay damages. Richard Blackwell was removed as HOA president and faced criminal charges for fraud. The county was forced to refund money to the Willowbrook Estates residents, whose property values plummeted when they learned their lake access was never legal. But the most important victory was personal. On the morning after the trial ended, I walked down to the lake for the first time in 8 months. The HOA guards were gone. The no trespassing signs were gone. It was just me, the dock my grandfather built, and the water that held all my memories. I cast my line into the lake and felt Sarah's presence beside me. The grief was still there, but for the first time since she died I felt something else too: hope. A year later, I established the Sarah Morrison Memorial Foundation, which helps families fight property fraud and HOA abuse. We've helped dozens of people reclaim their rights and expose corrupt developers. I still fish in the lake every morning. Sometimes I see Willowbrook Estates residents walking around it and I always wave. Most of them are good people who got caught up in Blackwell's scheme. A few have even apologized for what happened. The lake belongs to me again, but more importantly, I belong to myself again. Fighting for what was right gave me a reason to live beyond my grief. Sarah would have been proud. As I write this, sitting on the dock my grandfather built, I can see the sun setting over the water. Tomorrow morning I'll be back here with my fishing rod, watching the sun rise over the lake that taught me that sometimes you have to fight for what you love. And sometimes, if you're lucky and determined enough, you win. The HOA thought they could take my lake. They didn't realize they were messing with a man who had already lost everything that mattered. When you have nothing left to lose, you become dangerous to those who think they can take what little you have left. They called the cops when I went fishing on my own ranch lake. They didn't realize they were the trespassers in my life, my grief, and my family's legacy. But now they know. Now everyone knows.